Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with me today. This is Jess, and I am your host for the Learning to Glow podcast. Today, I'm talking with Sandy Zeldes. She's a holistic health expert, intuitive guide, and she calls herself a spiritual cowgirl. We're diving right into the real roots of why so many women struggle with food in their bodies. This conversation goes way beyond fitness and nutrition. She breaks down how guilt, shame, and old emotional patterns from childhood shape our eating habits, why focusing only on diet keeps us stuck, and how healing the nervous system leads to real change. We also talk about her use of EFT tapping, what ancestral nutrition truly looks like, and how to break those self-sabotaging cycles that so many of us fall into. I hope you enjoy it. She was wonderful. And also, I wanted to mention, since I'm always talking about how beauty and healthy skin start from the inside out, I just shared on my latest newsletter one way I'm helping my skin from the inside, and that's with supplementing collagen. Collagen is such a powerful way to help the skin, especially as we age. And currently, I am giving out a sample of the one that I'm loving. The one that I'm loving, it's great for your skin and joints, but it also has ingredients in it that helps with blue light exposure and our vision, which is really important to me because I am on screens so much for work, and I want to protect my vision because it's very precious. So that's one thing that I have been adding into my routine lately and I love, and I am offering a sample for every Simply Jess skincare order that is placed while I still have supplies. So you can also sign up to my newsletter for more tips on just achieving healthy skin, different ways that we can protect our skin and help it glow. So that is it for me with skin, and I hope you enjoy today's episode so much. Here is our conversation with Sandy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show today. Thank you for being here. We have Sandy Zeldes with us. Welcome to our show, and thank you so much for being here with me.
Well, thank you, Jess. I'm really excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this call.
Yay. Okay, so before we get started, I would love if you could just give us a little description of what you do, a little bit about your background, a little bit about you, and then we can get into our conversation.
Wonderful. So, I have a long history with food and health, holistic health, and I call myself spiritual cowgirl, which is all about truth and authenticity and just simplicity, really, to me, with deeper insights, right? And I'm a food lover from way back. And, part of my passion about doing the work that I do is that so many successful women and professional women, high achievers, struggle with this issue with food silently. I've noticed year after year after year, feeling like failures, even though they've achieved so much in their lives, in their professional and their family lives. And so that's why I blended trauma healing and emotional healing, belief work with what I call ancestral nutrition. Not just so they can lose the weight, which is a symptom. It's always a symptom of something else. But so they can feel free from guilt and shame with food in their bodies.
I love that. I'm so glad that you help women with this because what you said really rings true is that these women are suffering silently. And that is so true. We are suffering in silence because it's a shameful thing that we're dealing with, or we think it is a place to be feeling shame. And so I think that is really wonderful. As far as like when you're working with women who are in the situation and they're feeling shame, they're, like you said, in silence dealing with this. What are some of the things, the common struggles that they are having when it comes to feeling shame? Is it Well, you tell us. I mean, when it comes to their bodies, when it comes to the fact that they are trying to lose weight, or like, what are they dealing with? Where is the shame coming from?
Wow. I mean, that's a really big question. That's the crux of it. And it's interesting. So we think, okay, so here's what I'll tell you. From my experience, I've been doing this 20 years now. Believe it's crazy. It's been a long time. One of my first, jobs out of holistic nutrition was working in a outpatient eating disorders clinic. And this is where I quickly learned about it's not just a few people struggling with this. This is
Yeah.
a epidemic of something else going on. And what is this shame? And so, what we think we're having is a food issue, right? We use food, wine, beer. Typically, the alcohol is a little bit less, right? But it's a substance being used. People use gummies, right? You can use anything. You can overwork, etc. There can be addictive habits. But primarily, I work with the food and how people behave around food and why. And this shame is one of the top drivers: shame and blame and self critique. And so, when you ask, well, where does that come from? I mean, it's a tip of an iceberg to something else that is usually, typically, especially if it's a chronic issue for somebody, has been lifelong. It comes from, patterns, trauma, little t traumas, big T traumas, complex trauma from childhood. It typically does stem from another time. It can also be from complicated relationships. I don't want to say, I know there's so much information about, dark personalities and narcissism and all this. I'm not a clinician. I'm not going to use those terms, but I deal with a lot of that with clients that they've been in traumatic relationships. And often they don't know. So this is why it's unconscious. Like usually all we're aware of is I can't stop eating or I'm eating too much or I don't like how I look, right? The critical voices are the problem, not the way you look. And can I tell you a quick story about
Yeah.
that just happened that I thought was fascinating? I get in conversations about this like walking down the street, I don't know. It's just people ask me what I do and they always tell me, "Oh, I can't believe you do that because I struggle with that." And I'm looking at a woman who's in perfect shape, or at least, the world would never judge what she sees, right? And I can't tell you how many clients I've had that like they send me pictures because I usually work online and sometimes it's not on video. And I wouldn't know anyway. I'm not going to judge their bodies. That's not what I do. I'm not looking for that. I don't take measurements um, but our self perception is so negative, right? Even when we've got it all together. And of course, I was like that when I was younger. I still get like that at times, but not like it's not based on. Anyway, it's different, right? I have 30 years in of healing some core root causes. And again, like I said, it usually I can't even think of an example that doesn't come from something that we learned or picked up or just something that happened. Doesn't even have to be years and years of patterns from childhood. Does that make sense? So
Totally. Yeah.
well, I was going to tell you an example and I of course didn't. I was doing a beach walk and I was standing at a light, a really long light, and I said, "Isn't the weather?" I just started talking to this woman about the weather. It was so beautiful out. I was like, "Oh my, can you believe how beautiful it is?" And she started talking to me, "Yeah, it's so beautiful. I love walking." Blah, blah, blah. And we started talking. And I love this woman. And she was telling me all about that her whole family does this and just constantly thinking about food and the next diet and what are we going to do? And are we eating right? And we should do this, we should do that, and we should do keto. We do and like there's just no freedom, there's no peace. And it's interesting to me what an epidemic I feel it is in our society. It's not about the way we look. It's not about being overweight. Some of my clients think they have 10 pounds to lose or 5 pounds to lose, and it will just destroy their mental health. Like they just are so critical of the 5 pounds or the 10 pounds. Others, 30 to 50 to 60 or more, even. And it's just a different pattern, but it always has a deeper root than we're aware of.
Yeah, I want to go back to a little bit ago when you were talking about the criticalness of what women are seeing and how hard on ourselves, even to a point where 5 or 10 pounds is just driving somebody so, you know,
Yeah.
and putting them in such a bad place mentally. Do you see, I mean, and you didn't use the word body dysmorphia, but that's what I thought of like people who are, they're having a hard time with what they're seeing because it's like their body, maybe they go up and down in weight and they are told like they should look this way, or maybe they have an image in their head of what they should look like. And they're struggling so hard with that goal or that thing that they think they should see. Do you see a lot of that with your clients as well?
Absolutely. And especially in my high achievers, right? I mean, it could be anybody struggling with this, but it doesn't have to be. I have, stay at home moms, of course, that go through this a lot. But, before an important event, let's say, like a meeting or after a meeting or something that they're just putting so much pressure on themselves and they get really self-critical and suddenly they look in the mirror and they can't stand, nothing's right, but they're the same as they were the day before. And the body becomes the struggle, the place of, the point of contact for their struggle. And so is it really about the body? Is it really about, what they're eating? Is it about the weight, or is it about their anxiety overall, about performance anxiety or feeling like a fraud, or all the things they tell themselves, which stem from old traumas? And a couple of my clients, like there's a pattern of how you're put on diets as a child, or a mother who had issues with her body and transmitted that to the daughter. I can't tell you how many women I've worked with, and this isn't everyone, but this is one pattern that happens, is it's passed down, where they are put on diets prepubescent even, like, and they're not overweight. It's just the mother's stress for
Mm.
whatever reasons, right? Which we could, which is the same reasons as any woman's, something that happened to her, and her fears and her worries and her self-critique and her issues behind it all. And whether you know this or not, it still operates. So like my clients will know, yes, my mother did that. Yes, I would never put my child on a diet at 11 and give them salad, like just salad for a growing child. Like the stories I hear, it's very abusive with food, how
Mm.
we get. And I call that, I think it's abusive to put a child on a quote diet. And I don't know if it's as common nowadays, but doctors used to do that for my generation, for Gen X. Apparently, this was a prescription. And, we used to have programs like Weight Watchers that were very popular, and people would go and count their points and count calories. And a lot of women are still doing that. And the problem is, if you're trying to solve an emotional issue with an external solution, it doesn't work, right? And it makes you more anxious and more depressed and more hopeless, and feel like a failure because you're shooting the arrow at the wrong target.
Yeah, it's like the
Did
woman
I
that
answer?
you yeah, yeah, it's like the woman that you met at the crosswalk who was walking on your beach walk. It's like, where can you put your next focus on? Like, what future diet can we dive
Yeah,
back into? And like,
exactly.
I feel like that takes away from dealing with maybe what's underneath all of this, like what's happening underneath all of this. And so how do you begin? It's like we all have something that has, like you mentioned, trauma. We all have some type of trauma in our lives. And going to talk about like another thing that you said, we all have different ways of coping with that. And it could be anything. Food's a tricky one when we all need to eat to survive. And it's like we are also bombarded with food as far as what society and the diet culture part of it. So it's like we're coming at food is complicated as far as if you're having any type of issue with it, or if there's something that you want to work on with food, it's so much more complicated than I feel like some of the other issues that people can overdo to kind of cope with emotional issues that we're having. So like, where do we start when you're working with a client and there's some underlying thing, like you said, so they might know cognitively, yeah, I had this issue when I was a kid and that happened to me, but maybe not realizing that this is maybe bringing on some of the actions and behaviors that they're doing when it comes to food and their body and their thoughts.
I mean, honestly, the first step is just to be aware
Yeah.
that there's something, that it's not your fault. You're not to blame for this not working. It's you're giving the wrong medicine to the problem. Like you're taking the wrong medicine for the problem you're having, right? And mostly people aren't aware of the problem, which is fine. I say that's good. That's okay. We don't have to know everything. Like we can't know. It's in our unconscious, like it's buried how it's really affecting us. All of us, our unconscious, our subconscious is 90% of the influence on our behavior, thoughts, beliefs. So that's just true. So, or you don't have to believe that's true. I don't know how you could quantify that per se, but I know that lots of people talk about that. I can tell you from working with people that it's true. Like most of our behavior is unconscious, and it only shifts when we actually release something that is a true driver. And so the first step is that people, I believe, need to stop. Just don't think another diet's the answer, and be willing to address the inner causes at a deeper level. Doesn't have to be torture and painful. In the work that I do, it's relatively quick, weeks for change, months, not years. So people who've tried everything and failed, well, they're shooting the air at the wrong target, number one. And number two, they need the right depth of a tool and experience to get to the root causes that are actually driving what is a genuine problem. It's not minor. It can't be fixed with just eating lettuce or having a smoothie or doing keto and I'm not against any diet plan, or I'm not the food police. I always tell people, look, because they hear the word nutrition and they're like, you're going to take everything away. And I'm like, actually, I'm probably going to trigger you by wanting you to eat more. And and so when we're triggered and when we're afraid of food and when we think that food is the problem. So when you said, well, food is hard because it's everywhere, we have to eat every day. Actually, it stops being the thing that causes you anxiety, and you can eat intuitively, naturally, without me having to tell you what to eat, because we are all way wiser than we know.
Mm-hmm.
And we have more information than we need, right? Most of my clients have done a million diets. They typically know what works for them and what doesn't. And your inner wisdom will help you. I'll give you an example. So everyone's different, by the way, how we have to heal, right? We have different foods for different times in our lives. We have different things we need to do at different times. If we've been eating a highly processed diet for year after year, we need to cleanse more than someone who is fasting all the time. And, I have categories of clients. There's the health conscious client who's always on a cleanse and a detox, who's probably pretty deficient. I hesitate to use any, but needs to eat more, not less. And then there's like I said, the other category. So this is where intuitive, your body knows, it's not rocket science. Actually, it really isn't. Really
Mm-hmm.
isn't. Once we take away the blocks of, just this constant, the stress and anxiety, that causes us to want to comfort with food, reward with food and wine, or the extra cocktails, and soothe and numb. Those are the main drivers. And you cannot solve this by talking about, you can't solve it with a diet, because your need for comfort and to numb and soothe and reward is so much stronger. It's why we struggle with willpower and fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. So
Oh
so
yeah.
the first step, I'm going to keep going back to it, is to stop shaming and blaming. Don't stop seeing this as an external solution for what's an internal, much more sophisticated problem we're having. Honor ourselves that, hey, there's something going on. And I can't tell you, it doesn't matter how educated, intelligent, all my clients are so intelligent, and it works against us, right? Our intelligence isn't what we want to operate with. We want to go into our embodied wisdom, and we want to feel what we really haven't been able to feel. And that's okay. It's okay. And move on. I'll give you an example. So can I give you an example? Or
Yeah, absolutely.
so we may know that we're pissed off about something, or frustrated or stressed out, about a situation in our lives, like a communication issue, let's say. I had a client who was very well aware that she was very frustrated with a situation that was daily, with not being able to communicate. And let's call her Sue. And Sue was eating a lot after dinner. It's typically the nighttime eating, but a lot of times it can be during the day. Like she was eating dessert for lunch and, just a lot of extra comfort foods throughout the day. And she was extremely distressed about her weight. I don't, the exact amount, probably about 30 pounds, but it doesn't matter how much because it's always about the internal. And my clients will take off weight as soon as they're good and ready. That is actually the easy part, believe it or not. And the hard part is this. And so she was really struggling. And so the root for her, I love the image of a tree, right? The tree roots, and then our beliefs and our behaviors are the leaves on the tree that regrow. And she'd never been able to figure out what the roots were, number one, and number two, pull them out. So when we started to pull them out, it was patterns in childhood, just so many patterns of not feeling safe to even speak what she was feeling, just keep moving. She was a very, very determined, high achieving go getter, just constantly. I mean, this is very common, of course, just moving, pushing through instead of feeling and knowing what you're feeling, because it wasn't really safe. And just in her family, was it abusive? Was it, this lots of trauma? I mean, you would probably say no, like it wasn't. She loved her, she loved her siblings, her family. Didn't seem traumatic to her, but actually it was pretty traumatic in that she was holding on to so much that she wasn't even aware how much she was holding on to. So the first step was being okay with, feeling things. And, the first step is always just to start where you're at. You can't go beyond where you're at. You have to be where you are. I always tell people that there's no rushing through your own process. It is what it is for each person. So for her, we worked with a lot of the communication and feeling safe to communicate. And that was very challenging. And once that was the first step, the pull for the food just disappeared, right? It's not like, oh, I don't know what to eat and oh, I'm afraid of that food. It's like it just didn't matter because she felt okay, right? By that first step. And there were more steps, then there was like, how do I do this? And so we addressed those next pieces, right, over time. And she got to a point where just, communication felt easier, which she still struggles with sometimes because it's such a pattern for her and she's with her family. But she knows that it's not about the food, it's about how much anxiety she's feeling about these patterns, right? And so there were roots we pulled up that allowed her to just stop focusing on food, and she did take off weight and she did eat. So here's a big kicker that always happens. People start shifting how they eat. I have like I don't know why I categorize them like this. I probably shouldn't, but I have the the green smoothie, the super healthy. They're eating so many vegetables. I'm like, okay, we don't need to talk about vegetables, and fruits. They're doing the detox cleanse thing just fine. And then there's the client who's like, I don't know what to cook if it's not mac and cheese and fast food out of a box. Okay. And so obviously these two people have a different thing they're doing in a different direction. One is restrictive in one way, one's restrictive in another. Well, and so typically people resist eating differently, right? Oh, I have to do it the way I've always done it. And so for her, one of the magical things that happens is because it really is internal blocks. It just is. We block ourselves from doing something different. People will shift naturally. So this woman started to cook more. At first, it was uncomfortable to not do the junk food, the box food. Let's call it box food, and just quickly serve something. But we kept clearing what was that about. It was just resentment, right? And it was still more blocks to eating differently and to taking care of herself and her needs, and which was part of the deeper issue. And she started to be able to cook for her family in ways that, I mean, honestly, it's like night and day, which it was a big deal. A lot of my clients find that they start cooking differently or they want to cook. That's huge. I mean, it's a huge shift to want to do that. A lot of people are so resentful about the cooking, shopping, and blah. Well, that's just one more way we block ourselves, because actually, what are you really resentful about? Like, it's self-nourishment. And I say this from working with people, not from some belief I have or opinion. I see people shift from within and they suddenly feel like cooking. Why? Because that's self-care, really, and it's nourishing. And that comes naturally when we take away the stress, anxiety, the self-critique slash self-hate, everything we're working against ourselves. And I was telling a client last night, like, aha, my work here is done because now you're on your own side.
Right.
I said, do you hear yourself? You're finally on your own side. Like before, you were fighting yourself. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
and I see the shift in they got to get to the point where they're working for themselves. They want to take care of themselves. They self-care.
Yeah.
I call it self-care. It's a whole category, but like drinking more water, which by the way, as you know, Jess, which I had a question for you about, I really don't want to forget to ask you about how you implement all of this in your practice as a licensed esthetician and what connections you see. But, for me, it starts with the energetic, emotional healing. It's release work and healing that makes everything natural. So, like, for example, your skin, it really can't glow if we're not drinking enough. Let's face it, it sounds so silly and simple, but I've never worked with a client who drank enough water.
Yeah.
And that's self-care. We have to, and filtered, like the right water that we actually want to drink. There's a reason you don't want to drink tap water. Your body's saying ick. So finding spring water, I help people find the right water near them or the right filter or whatever, and put electrolytes into it. And, right there, your skin plumps out, right? Like,
Right. I love what you said about like we know so much, our body knows so much intuitively. And I think, like you said, a lot of your clients, they don't need, maybe there is that one type of client who needs some education, of course, about nutrition. They're not used to making their own food and things like that. But a lot of us know sort of the basics and like how to get healthy and what we kind of need to do. It is definitely something that we do have so much intuition. And if we're listening to like, okay, this person's telling me to do this diet and eat this food, and there's always something new too, like a new trend on social media. This week it's like eat 2 cups of beans a day, or like there's literally
I know.
it's every day it's something new, and I'm like, oh my god. So but getting back to like people who are starting to get back on track, first of all, like you said, step 1, be aware. I am having certain blocks. These are certain things that have happened that are causing me to sort of have the behaviors that I have. They're getting back on the right track. They're not there yet. Do you see a lot of those people come to you and say, I'm self-sabotaging? Because I feel like that's a big word that people use a lot, especially as they are learning to change and like wanting to change, but they're not quite there yet. And tell us a little bit about self-sabotage and how we can work on that and not doing that to ourselves.
Well, just remember that self-sabotage is self-love, but unconscious self-love. So I always tell
Mm-hmm.
people, we need to get in touch with that girl who wants to mainline cookies because she's the real you. Like she's the you you're not wanting to see. She's the you that you're just not able to talk to. And it's true. I mean, that rebellious person in us, that's our best friend. She's saving our butts, right? And so self sabotage isn't what we think it is. Look, we only heal at the speed of safety. You cannot force yourself. That's why I'm not a fan. I mean, this is going to sound crazy. I love goals, but I don't believe in like, I feel like we have such higher wisdom available to us than goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
My experience, every time I set a goal, it's limited. It's just not my highest possibility. And I'm happier when I just let intuition lead. And we can live like that. We just have to like, we're so used to being left brained in our heads, in our society. That's what our society respects. And we may not even realize we're doing it. But when we get into what I feel is our body, our embodied wisdom, our hearts, and our, intuitive emotional state, there's so much power. And we can live in a way that's so much gentler. And so and sabotage is like your friend because it's teaching you
Mm-hmm.
where you're why, like there's a reason for everything, why you're doing what you do. Does that make sense?
I could see how along this journey you would have self-sabotage, or what I haven't had anybody explain it to me like you did. That's so good. It's like, oh, maybe this is coming up here at this point for a reason. Like this is the thing that I need to deal with, or like this has come up because of a deeper reason.
I would just say, that The most important thing about, we see ourselves sabotaging. We can do this in any area of our lives, right? With relationships, with food, with our bodies. And it's always for a reason. And it's 100% of the time unconscious, or we would stop, or
Mm,
willpower would work. That person, yes, I could send them a plan and let's do a detox. Let's do this, let's do that. And they're fine. That person exists, right? There's a lot of people that don't need to address the sabotage. Sabotage can happen in a small way, in a big way, but a lot of times when we're feeling that fear or that anxiety, there's good reasons. And I was thinking of another example. So I had a client who would literally, she used to say to me that her body felt like it would puff out 20 pounds every time she would even think about dating. and and I'll never forget her saying that. And it was a long time ago. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so interesting. And of course, I understood weight gain from protection from abuse and different things, but like hers was more about dating. It wasn't an abuse issue. It wasn't the classic examples I'd worked with. It was more just a lot of beliefs about herself and dating and men that just made her very uncomfortable. It wasn't even, so she just would like keep her, and she was miserable because she wanted to attract a relationship. And so she was like, what am I doing puffing up like this? I need to go date. And she's like, but I don't want to date. And anyway, so there was this need for protection that was very, very, very real. And no matter where it comes from, your body, so you could say your body's sabotaging, you're sabotaging. She was staying up at night eating extra sweets and junk food and things she didn't normally eat. She was a very health conscious person. She's like, I'm so embarrassed I'm eating all this junk food, cookies and stuff. And I'm like, well, this need to puff up to date, to feel safe dating. I mean, and she would laugh about it too. Like it wasn't, once we worked with it, it was really quite interesting. It went away very rapidly for her, and she stopped sabotaging and she lost the weight really fast,
yeah.
because she really was, needing to protect herself. So just erase the word sabotage with protection or safety
Mm.
or self-care, but in reverse, like in a way that is unconscious.
I love that's so great. I love that explanation. So, when I was reading about on your website, I saw that you also do tapping, and I've talked about EFT tapping on my podcast, and I wanted to see if you like using that with your clients to as a tool for
Oh,
dealing
that's
with some of
primarily
these
what I do. Yeah.
primarily. Okay, tell us about why
Oh, yeah.
tapping is so
Absolutely.
great for this type of work.
Well, so I'm an advanced practitioner, and I started out, I'm a chef and nutritionist. My full bio is at the website, sandyzeldes.com. By the way, /Jess, I think we called it your first name, Glow. No, Glow. Sorry about that. We
Okay.
usually use the names. We use Glow. They can read about my background, but I was a chef. I've had many versions of my career, to celebrities. And then I worked with nutrition my whole life, and I studied nutrition, as I said, worked in a eating disorders outpatient clinical program. And I used to be very heavy on the functional medicine nutrition angle. I call it ancestral nutrition, which is the
Mhm.
only diet there is, by the way. And that's what I actually help people do, so that they don't have to even think about all the different variations of diets out there. There's foundational things that work, um, that help you to eat intuitively. So that's what I teach. But that was the easy stuff, right? That's the checklist, and it's fun for me. I'm like an encyclopedia of knowledge about the body and nutrition and the brain chemistry and the hormones. I find that very simple, and so do my clients, actually, to implement once they have cleared the word sabotage, the sabotage. And the sabotage says, well, I can't stop eating cookies and I'm up all night. So that's where EFT comes in, with an advanced practitioner who understands how to get to the root causes. Anyone can watch a video and dabble, and maybe they feel better for a couple of minutes, which is good, but it's not pulling out roots. And you do need an expert approach to get to do it properly, I would say, to have it, not come back, basically. There are methods, obviously. And so there's a lot of videos out there now, and some of my professional colleagues, get upset about how simple it looks, and people think they can be their own practitioner and get the same results. Well, not real. I mean, you can, but not to the extent of an issue like addiction or compulsion or a lifelong habit that you can't stop, and trauma. You shouldn't really go that alone. So to get good results. And why would you anyway? Like, you don't need to. So people don't need to go it alone. And I think that's part of the trauma. But so EFT is very interesting. It's just a very simple application using your fingertips to tap on meridian points. Meridian points have been mapped by Eastern cultures for over 6,000 years. We use traditional meridian points. Sometimes we move around, but whether you believe in that or not, it kind of doesn't matter. It still works. I've used it with animals. It's a long story, but I've been using it for 30 years, practitioner for almost 20, I think it's 20 now. So, and I studied under the original founder, and it was very thorough and fun. And I think I got I think I got a lot of information that is no longer being taught in my experience. But I'm not, I'm sure there's people out there. But anyway, so I'm the the old original OG. And plus I've just been working with women. So I get it. I hear the same patterns over and over, and I've developed a method around it. And so EFT works on an energetic level. And of course, there's studies, and they're on my website. You can look it up, but, lowering cortisol, lowering blood pressure, and of course, all the side benefits that has, lowering anxiety. In my experience working with people, I'm just going to state that it literally pulls out trapped emotion that we can't access in many other ways. I think that there's methods, of course, in the world. There's all kinds of methods people have tried, myself included, and I'm always coming back to tapping. There's nothing like it in my experience. Breath work is great, all of that's great, but we have to consciously go in and remove. It's like psychic surgery. I just find it to be so effective.
Yeah.
And fast if you do it right. And if you work with the right person, it's profound, to be honest, because everything is energy or a vibration. Our emotions still have resonance and live within us and in our field. And our bioenergetic field goes out from beyond our body. And we actually don't even know how far, because we can't measure beyond a certain amount for the heart field. And so we are projecting whatever we're feeling, right, on a daily basis. And that's our vibration. It comes from a thinking and feeling state. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's some other things going on. I find it fascinating. And it's the most fun work there is, because think about what we can do, right? It's not about food. If it had to be about food, I'd never do it year after year. Because it's really not like, we end up almost never talking about food, right? It's about what's going on inside of you, what's causing this anxiety, and that's where it's fun, because everyone's different and unique and has their own internal story.
I'm so glad you shared about the tapping, because I've read so many incredible things about it. And I love that you said it can be fast. And that's so huge. If someone's struggling,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do something like tapping, like literally no side effects, only positive. It's just like, and being able to work with
Well, the side
somebody.
effect is that
Yeah,
yeah.
only good side effects, no negative side effects. And I just think like it's really something to look into if you're struggling. I've heard so many good things. I've heard so many stories about it that it just blows my mind. It's such a great thing to look into if you are struggling. I think, like you said, deeper and more important than some of the nutrition, like you said, like checking off the box and all of that. But I would love if you could just touch upon it.
Well, and that's important too. I don't want to disregard it.
No,
Yeah, but
it is important.
if we can't put it into action, right? Like a lot of my
Yes.
clients, they can't even themselves drink water because they're in their sabotage. They're sabotaging. They don't care. They don't want to take care of themselves. They want to go eat the cookies. They want to, they're not going to bed and getting enough sleep. They're not prioritizing their needs. So how am I going to put a nutrition plan? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Absolutely.
So we have to prioritize ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like I so resonate with that. We can know all of these things on paper and still have things that are unresolved that are going to help us not do those things in the first place. But I'd love to just, if you could, you've mentioned it a few times, tell us a little bit about what ancestral nutrition means and just like give us a little description of that. And that's something that you've known and learned about so long ago, but some people may not have heard of that term before. So tell us a little bit about that.
So it's treating someone as an individual to start. So, for example, even within the foundations of kind of basic food needs, basic ways of eating that are foundational, we all are unique. So your ancestry is different from mine, even within the
Mm,
same family. Like me and my sister have totally different expressions of our family background, I think, based on different things. So I assess that. And one person's, health food is another person's poison.
mhm,
It's not just about food sensitivities, but it's about types of carbohydrates. It's about need for fatty acids, different things that we all need differently in expression. But there's basic guidelines within that I don't want to go over specifics because it's always like, oh, it's another diet. No, it's just there are ways to eat that will control your blood sugar, that will
mm,
control metabolism. And then within that, it's adjusting to your own ancestral kind of expression of what you need that makes you thrive. And then it's your activity levels. So it's looking at individual, but also looking at foundations for different ancestral expressions.
okay,
And then within
perfect.
that, looking for what I call specific challenges we all have, right? Like,
Mhm,
one client had a methylation issue and that was very serious. And that's not everybody.
yeah,
This is where functional medicine comes in. And no other nutritionist had caught it, no other person she'd work with because everyone's applying a one size fits all.
yeah,
And I frankly did that when I started because I didn't know better. But once you start working with clients, everyone's unique. Even though within this framework that fits a basic model of supporting blood sugar hormones and metabolism, we still have to adjust because those people with the methylation issue, well, that has to be addressed. If you give them too much of certain things, it can kill them. Like, it's a serious issue. So, and it's more and more common. There's lots of factors, but primarily it's about individual nutrition based on ancestral expression.
yeah, that's super helpful. You do so much when you're working with clients. It's like you have this nutrition piece, but you also have like the piece that is so important that we can learn what our needs are, why we're, you're basically helping people figure out like why am I having the urges and the behaviors that I'm having and what do we need to release or be aware of. So it's like it's such a neat way to help clients in such a holistic way. So if somebody is listening to this message and they're like, I really resonate with a lot of what you're saying, and like they're struggling in some of the things that we've talked about, maybe you could share like how someone could work with you or like where to find you, because there are people who are feeling stuck that are listening to this and are looking for some help to deal with this because it's such a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. So we created that page. It's on my website, sandyzeldes.com, and that'll be in the show notes /glow for your
Mhm.
listeners, just for your listeners. And it has just a very brief free audio that they can opt in for. I made it brief on purpose to just be experiential. It's not a full tapping, hour long video. It's strictly so you can feel what it feels like to tap and think about a craving. So there's that free resource. And then I also have my best selling course on Daily Om, Heal Subconscious Blocks to Weight Loss, that they can purchase. And if they're feeling ready now and they want to talk to me and they know they're done and they've been dealing with this a long time and they resonate, they can fill out an application to work with me one on one.
Okay. Okay, perfect. I'll leave all this in the show notes. I love Daily too. I'll leave a link
Yeah,
to your class.
yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's on that page that you've got there.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sandy, for coming on and sharing all of this great information with us. I'll make everybody listening go to the show notes and check out all the links will be there for you. And thanks again, Sandy, for sharing with us today.
Thank you, Jess. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.